Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me this week on Newsmakers. Well, fall 2019 is the Oceania semester at Missouri Southern, and we're looking at a part of the world maybe you haven't heard a lot about. It's the Pacific area with a lot of nations and areas of focus. But today we're looking at the Marshall Islands, and more specifically, the Marshallese people. And joining me is Melisa Laelan, who's with the Arkansas Coalition of Marshallese. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, of course. Nice. Pleasure to be here.
I'm going to start off with, we have a brochure talking about the theme semester. What was your reaction when you found out Missouri Southern's having a whole, semester of activities kind of looking at your part of the world?
Well, I read the whole thing, and I was fascinated by it. And just the fact that this university is really, this is a work of inclusion, right? And you focus on international. So I was really fascinated by it. And just the fact that I got an invitation to speak in front of an audience at the university. It's a major step. It's a big step for me, and and something that's really unique for me is outside of my state in Missouri. So, yeah, it's been to me it's a great thing to have and to be part of.
Right. And I know for our audience, I'll explain that I'm speaking to you after you've had your presentation here at Missouri Southern, and you were speaking today about the culture and the activities of Marshallese people, and it's not too far away, say out of your state. We're talking about basically down the interstate into northwest Arkansas.
Yeah,
okay.
We're neighbors.
Right. So, but I think before we get into the talking about the United States and what we have here, let's give some background. People say Marshall Islands, they're in the Pacific somewhere, but I know you have a map we can refer to, and just give us a little bit of information for our viewers.
Yeah, I like to describe especially the location, because that's really usually the first inquiries that people make is, where are the Marshall Islands? And I usually have to really sit down and say, just so think about it, we're kind of like the midpoint of Hawaii and I usually say New Zealand. So it's really the midpoint of those two areas. So I usually just draw that map and make a point to it, and then when they come in particular when they have interest in Arkansas, I just draw like an arrow going Arkansas, right?
Which we have on the map right here to show you where we're at in relation to that part of the world and so forth. Now the islands themselves have a rich history and a lot of involvement with the United States throughout that history as well. Yeah,
there is a lot of really deep things that normal people really don't know. For example, there's that nuclear legacy that usually people don't get and don't even know about.
So in the 1950s, when the United States was testing all those bombs, it was happening there.
Yeah, they were happening. For 12 years, 67 bombs were detonated on the Marshall Islands grounds to test. I think that was done to compete with the Russian, and to see who's going to outdo who.
My bomb's bigger than your bomb.
Yeah, exactly. And so the biggest and the safest, at least the location for them to use, was the Marshall Islands, because due to its location.
It was isolated.
Isolation, yes.
Now you say Marshall Islands, people might wonder, how many islands are we talking about?
That in general, there are actually 34 islands, 5 islands, and 29 atolls. Oh, okay. Yeah, and when we talk about islands, we're not talking about like Hawaiian islands that are highly elevated. No, we're talking about flat, low-lying. It's maybe close to the ocean level.
So yes, flat barrier. I mean, they're not going to be big mountainous islands.
Exactly.
Right,
yeah.
Right, and tying that together. And how many people are living on those islands then as part of the group?
So in my presentation said 57,000, but that number could have changed within the last couple months. But 60,000, I would like to say 60,000 people that actually live in the island.
And the Marshall Islands are an independent country, correct?
They are. They have is a self-sovereignty nation.
Right.
Yes.
But you still have relationships with the United States tied into the history, right?
Yes, there is that COFA, which is Compact of Free Association, that really is the binding that the islands have with the United States of America, and that was actually established in 1986. Okay. That was signed in 1986 by both countries, and what that does, it's really just give us, okay, this is the status that you're in, which is a non-immigrant status. Here's what you can do, and here's what you cannot do. Well, mainly it doesn't tell us what not to do. It just tells us what we can do, and all the, to me, they're like the clause, the hidden clause.
Right, and there's a little asterisk there. You have to find out things in the hard way.
Exactly, the hard way.
Right.
Yeah.
English being predominant language, or
Marshallese is the prominent language, but English, there are two languages that are spoken on the islands. Growing up as a student, I actually learned Marshallese was my native language, but I learned the English language as well. So two languages.
Two languages. So, and that leads us to your presentation today. You talked about coming to the United States, and you grew up there. Then you joined the United States Army, which gave you experience, obviously working with the United States, which led you here to the U.S.
Yeah. And I'm thankful for that, and I think what that did was giving me leadership skills that I probably would have never gotten anywhere else. And it did make me what I become today. Yeah.
Right. So now you're working Northwest Arkansas, as you talked about, in the Springdale area. What large population, and a lot of our viewers may not realize this, that you know, you were talking about the population of who lives in the Marshall Islands now, but you have a large population in Northwest Arkansas.
Yes, it's actually Northwest Arkansas, in Arkansas in general, has the largest population of Marshallese outside of the Marshall Islands. So that's pretty interesting because the biggest concentration is in Springdale, in Northwest Arkansas, in Springdale. And a lot of things are happening, and really the reason for the migration is because it is really an affordable place to live, and you can move to Springdale today and actually find a job today, and hopefully possibly get a housing today too. So accessing a lot of things are pretty easy in that area too. And Tyson, you know, don't forget the poultry industry. You know, they're all there.
And so people are moving from the Marshall Islands to Arkansas because of jobs and the economy.
Because of job and economy, and also we got to remember that the first person who actually moved to Arkansas moved in the late 70s, so it's been, what, over 20s? So it took a time for growth.
Right.
No, we have experiencing that growing, and now I feel like the infrastructure is there. You have resources, you have nonprofit organizations that are run by Marshallese folks or have a mission to serve the Marshallese community, and you have also the Consul General there, which is basically the RMI government there. So it's sort of this home away from home feeling when Marshallese people move to Springdale. It's already there. I mean, we have birthday parties, and these are birthday parties that are huge. You're talking about perhaps 5,000 people in that birthday party. We have them every Saturday, and also we have over 40 churches. Wow. So it is really a vocal point and location for Marshallese to move to.
Sounds like a strong sense of community then.
There is a strong sense of community, and I think that is probably one of the greatest strength of this becoming or be part of this community, is that we always see that. We see the great support and that kinship that is occurring just among your own people. So yeah.
So when we talk about sharing cultures, which obviously we're doing through this theme semester at Missouri Southern, you're able to share some information about culture as well. And you know, people, when they move to a new country, they have bringing their cultural traditions and so forth along as well. Yeah,
we do, and I think that the best way to tell folks how we do that is through community events. We do multiple community events throughout the year. We just got done with Stroll the Atolls. The purpose of Stroll the Atolls, and this was this past summer, is really to educate the aiming at the non-Marshallese community to and give them that education that people are looking forward to have. So we've had those this type of request within the past year to do something that is interesting that the people wanting to see, and through these community events we're able to do that, and we'll share. We're very, to me, you know, I love my culture, and I want to share with you what my culture is. Right. Yeah. So you're becoming, with that community at large, sharing what your aspects are of sharing. And yeah. Now you mentioned 40 churches. That seems like a lot. So the religious aspect or the church aspect must be very strong as well, the people bring with them. Many, over 90% of ours are are Christians. We're followers. We call them followers. Christian, which basically say you're a God follower. So the churches really are strong pillars. That's one pillar that you always want to make sure that you include is the church, because they're so powerful and they lead so many people. Yeah, so within his church, I would say maybe between 100 to 200 members.
Wow.
That's very powerful.
So they have a definite impact on people's lives.
Definitely,
and working that sense of community and tying it together. Well, you mentioned the non-immigrant status. So let's explain what that means for people. You come to the United States, but you're not considered necessarily an immigrant. How does that fall into? It
does have its advantages and those disadvantages. Right. When a Marshallese move to the United States, they have a very sort of this special status, meaning the only thing that they require is a passport and an I-94. And they can stay here and live here with no restriction. They don't have to go home and renew their paperwork, and that's why they call it non-immigrant. But at the same time, there is really no status because they don't have a permanent residency, which most foreigners do have that.
They can establish that, right?
They can establish that. Marshallese, however, will never get that unless they, someone who's of a U.S. citizen and is a family member, or an immediate family member or husband will sponsor them. Then you can establish those. But right now, we see that, but not as many as it should be. So there's still this connection even to that pathway to citizenship. Yeah.
So the citizenship challenge is there, and then of course that probably affects all the benefits that comes with being a citizen.
Exactly. And I remember being when I just got out the military and I went to U of A, and I didn't have that status. It was very, very hard. I had to pay higher tuition.
Right, because you were in state, right?
Yes, because yeah, exactly. So there are a lot of challenges that really I had encountered and learn from those challenges. But yeah, and it does kind of prevent you from getting access to basic programs, things like the Medicaid, if you're an adult, at least in Arkansas, but in many states that's still a problem. Right. That's still an issue for adults and children. So yeah, it does that uniqueness of that is, it does have its pros and cons.
Some of those challenges that come up from that. Well, now you are the founder and chief executive director of the Arkansas Coalition of Marshallese. So if somebody asks you, what is that organization? How do you explain that?
I would say it's a 501c3, tax-exempt, not-for-profit organization. And we really, our vision is to have a better tomorrow, and we believe we can get to that vision if we have a mission. And our mission really is aspiring for growth through leadership, education, health, and culture to the community. So, but when we say community, we don't just mean the Marshallese community. We also understand that there's those partnerships that we need to build and establish in order for us to really work around these 4 pillars that we talked about. So we do a lot of things. You can think about the smallest tasks, like for example, setting up an appointment. Marshallese people come to our office and seek help, so we can maybe connect them to an attorney or connect them to a clinic or something like that. We would do that. People come and say, well, I need a job. I got this application, but I don't know how to fill it out. So we'll just sit there with them and do it. I need a resume. We'll sit there and do it. From the smallest thing to things like policy work, we do that as well. Youth mentorship program, we do that. Our policy work have really led to a lot of things that we now have access to, like the ARKIDS, Medicaid for children in Arkansas. Now the Marshallese children can have access to that. Human trafficking, we've done a lot of work around that as well. And also the tuition equity bill that we also help work on. So
you spend a lot of time going to Little Rock, visiting with lawmakers.
We do. You have to have those things. And we do, fortunately, our office do have great relationship with policymakers, and even with folks like, you know, the Walmart Foundation and Walton Foundation, Tyson Foundation. We do have those great relationship, and I think for me, it is our responsibility. It's our responsibility to educate our community. So yeah, we're very proud of that.
Great. Well, you mentioned the language earlier and helping people with it because they can't fill out the application. I know you have a background as an interpreter, so that's a key aspect of people who are maybe coming here not knowing the English language as well as maybe you had an opportunity.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest needs right now is the need to have not just interpreters but qualified interpreters, right? We're really there's always the constant need for that. We don't have, in Arkansas anyways, we only have the court certification program, but not for the health side of things. So that is always, that present a lot of problems, a lot of language, you know, access issues within the hospital and the clinics as well.
Yeah, I imagine health being such a growing concern, no matter who you are, you know, that if people need health care, they have to communicate with the physicians and the nurses and everyone. They have to be able to tell them what's happening. Yeah,
that does happen. So I always suggest to providers, if they come and meet up with me and I go, well, I think the best way for you to address this language barrier is to really hire someone who speaks that language, who's fluent in both languages, because you can, I'm not going to say you can completely fix things, but you can certainly get rid of a lot of issues.
Kind of lower that hurdle that people have to get over in tying that together. Well, the interpreters being a challenge, I know that in your program presentation here you also talked about challenges such as perhaps transportation, things that we may take for granted. You have to be able to get to those jobs. You have to be able to go shop.
Yeah, exactly. And remember that we all live in different cultures, right? And each population has its own characteristic and has its own difference, has its own things going on. And one of those things is, you know, perhaps that multiple families are living under one household, and that could present a problem because, you know, maybe that household just has one car, and that could be an issue. Yeah.
So they have to go to different jobs in one vehicle. You can see how it could be quite a challenge for them to do
and so we do offer a driver's license class in Marshallese in our office. We try to kind of lessen that hurdle that is happening. We have, so far we have reached and gotten over 200 people that actually got their driver's license within the last 2.5 years.
Now, you mentioned your staff earlier. People might be wondering, how big is your staff? What kind of support do you have? Obviously, you're the director, but you have to have a lot of people helping you out.
No, we actually don't have a big staff. We only have 7 staff. But a lot of the work that we do, really, we're able to do them because of volunteers. We just manage to do it, and we do get a lot of help from the community that come in, and especially these community events, you will see the community come up and step up and take part in these events. And it's been a really, that's maybe one of the things that I'm really proud of to be a Marshallese is that communal support and the communal sense of doing things. It's never about me being an individual. It's about, you know, shared. Is about what can I do to help. You know, we do have a whole saying that says, you know, kindness is life, which is Jojo Morel, and kindness is, it's really doing what you can do to help others. Yeah.
So, like most organizations that have limited staffing, volunteers really make things happen for you in many cases.
Yes.
And tying that together. You mentioned earlier the 4 points, and I think you have another graphic we can call up. We call it the one-stop shop. So let's see if they can call that and explain what we're looking at here, what this means. So
you're looking at the pie chart right there is actually broken into pieces, 4 pieces, 4 sections that tells you about the 4 pillars that we focus on: health, education, leadership, and culture. We do have, and those the boxes, the white boxes that you see, kind of tells you sort of these little activities and programs that we do. For example, we do have our own diabetes prevention program. I can't see it from here.
Right, but there's a lot of specialty areas.
There's a lot of specialty areas, even down to like intra-family adoptions.
Oh.
We help sharing properties is very common in our culture, down actually to people sharing children is also very common. It's very common for a child to born and being taken care of by an auntie with no document at all. But when you move to the United States, that is actually a problem.
You need
those documents. So that's what we do, is we help families, establish that relationship, so that way they won't have those issues at a later point. So we do focus on really keeping those children within the community and the family.
And mentioning children, I saw some programs for youth, working with youth for helping them become leaders, and also to help work with them to kind of retain their culture, but also adapt to the culture they're now living in. Yeah,
we do have a program right now called Telemur. Telemur means life is a gift. It can mean several things. Life is a gift, or sharing your skill. And that's what we're doing, is sharing the skills that we have to our younger generation, hopefully for them to carry on. But in that particular program, we do have, we offer mentorship, and we offer tutoring. So on the tutoring part, we help students with math. So they come in and they do, they bring like a math equation that they have issues with. We have professors that help them, and we help them really just enhancing their math skills. Other part of it has to do with culture. So especially those kids, those children who never understood or don't know the language or don't know the culture, there's another part of it that we teach them the Marshallese language, and also the culture and the history and everything else that is related to being Marshallese.
Continuing that in their family and their life.
Yeah, it's important for us to continue their parents' identity, and I feel like maybe we need to do what we can do to continue their culture, not allowing them to lose that.
Well, with that many people living in the area in Springdale, you have a lot of students then in the public school system attending the schools there.
Yes, there are over actually 3,000 Pacific Islanders, because that's the category that they are being identified as, that students that attend the Springdale school. And majority of them are Marshallese. So yes, we do have access to those kids, to the partnership that we have with the school.
So a lot of communication with the school district and helping those students succeed and go on.
Exactly, we do. We have a great partnership with the school. We host, every year we host a youth summit that will bring those students in and really just have them, have them learn about about really what's happening and the issues that really affect them directly.
Right. Now, have you seen the generations of youth going through school from elementary on to high school and maybe higher education as well? We're
now seeing that. Actually, we are seeing that. Now we're seeing few Marshallese, more Marshallese than when I was going to college that are going to University of Arkansas. Now we're going to Crowder College. So we have few Marshallese students that are going to Crowder College, and from what I know, there may be two here. If not here, they're coming your way. So
they're continuing to expand their opportunities in higher education.
And we're seeing it all over Facebook. Facebook has been a really powerful mode for us. Yeah, because every year you see Marshallese, they don't even have to live in Arkansas. You see a Marshallese person that graduated from University of Hawaii, or somewhere in New Zealand, or somewhere in China. So it's really been amazing seeing all these changes that are taking place. Yeah.
And of course, we're talking about Arkansas being the large population. Do you hear from other parts of the United States where they may have some Marshallese communities? And how are you doing it in Arkansas?
Well, Hawaii is one of them. They don't have we do have nonprofit that focuses on Marshallese here in Arkansas, but not Hawaii. And I think they focus on COFA in general. But Hawaii is one of them. Oregon is also one. Oregon folks have done a lot of great work on changing policy there. You also have folks in Oklahoma, Enid, Oklahoma. Yeah, Missouri though, there's a lot more folks from Pohnpei in Chuk that live in the state of Missouri. Yeah. But don't be surprised if you also will see more Marshallese coming your way. People moving. Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're not that far away, northwest Arkansas, southwest Missouri, and throughout this region and so forth. Well, what do you enjoy the most as far as with your position, with your organization, and helping the community?
I think the most satisfying thing that I see is being able to help, but there's also another indirect pleasurable thing that I get out of that is the fact that I'm able to work with the team and create these unique programs and able to bring that out. And sometimes I surprise myself, go, oh, did we just do that? I think we did. And I think that's really the beauty of when you do your work, know your identity, know who you are, and know your strength, know your power, really be sure of yourself. And I think that's why I love this job, is because we're able to do that and share it with the community.
Great. And it sounds like it's an opportunity to be able to adapt, to look to the future. It's not, this is the way we do it and it's going to stay this way.
It is, and that's one really great thing about, at least one of my attributes, is being able to adapt. And I learned that early. When I moved to the United States, very early on, I learned, joining the military, I learned that you have to adapt. You can't just focus on one thing. There's possibly more room for you to change the way you look at things. So just, just being able to do that is great. Yeah.
If someone has any questions after watching today, I know you have a website, you mentioned Facebook. How can they find out more about your organization?
They can come to our website, www.arkansasmarshallese, is one word, .org. I do get those, I think they call them feeds or comments that come through, and I do spend time and answer them.
Right, they comment here. And
and then our Facebook, Arkansas Coalition of Marshallese. There are times, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, people send me messages. I might not be able to answer you at that time, but I will be sure to answer you at some point. Yeah.
So increasing the opportunities to communicate with the rest of the community at large for your community as well.
Oh gosh, yeah. This is to me, sometimes I feel like I'm in a communication business, because you do have to be able to connect to people and be able to share what you're doing. Yeah, and it's been really nothing but good experience for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming to Missouri Southern, and thank you for sharing with what this semester, what's happening here, and continuing to look forward to how things go in the future.
Oh, of course, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And I'd like to thank the viewers for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on the station. We'll see you then.